TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom ve'erev tov, good evening. Welcome to our daily TV7 Israel News Bulletin, broadcast from Jerusalem. The Iranian-proxy Hezbollah fails to abide by President Donald Trump's declared ceasefire for Lebanon, repeatedly launching projectiles towards Israel's northern communities. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu directs the Mossad to frustrate Iran's efforts to rehabilitate itself, and at least one civilian was killed and 60 others sustained separate degrees of injuries when Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps launched dozens of ballistic missiles and drones towards the Kingdom of Bahrain and Kuwait. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio asserts that the Lebanese government and Israeli government could do a peace deal tomorrow were it not for the malign efforts by the designated terror organization Hezbollah, which continues to foment instability and war on Iran's behalf. Lebanese and Israeli representatives, to include Israeli Ambassador to Washington Yechiel Leiter and Lebanese Ambassador to the U.S. Nada Hamadeh, met under U.S. auspices to further negotiate a resolution to the conflict. The main obstacle, per Secretary of State Marco Rubio, during a hearing to the Senate's Foreign Relations Committee, remains the Ayatollah regime in Iran, which utilizes its proxy Hezbollah in an effort to retain Lebanon as a vassal state.
We are trying to view the Lebanon-Israeli talks as separate and distinct from Iran. And what Iran wants to do is mix it all together. Because Hezbollah is not legitimate. There's a government in Lebanon. That's who we're dealing with. And Hezbollah is not their equal in terms of who we're going to be dealing with or who needs to be in charge. So the point we're trying to make is that is what Iran is trying to stymie. They are trying to stymie any effort in which Israel and Lebanon can work together and prolong it so that if an arrangement is reached at some point in the future, they can claim credit for having forced it through leverage. And that's why you see, for example, Hezbollah agreed to a ceasefire about a week ago and then immediately violated within hours. It's one of the most ironic situations in the world. The Lebanese government and the Israeli government could do a peace deal tomorrow. Israel has no territorial claims in Lebanon. And Hezbollah is in particular, in fact, Hezbollah has called for the overthrow of the current Lebanese government. The impediment in Lebanon is the fact that Hezbollah has embedded itself into that country and is the reason for all the suffering that's happening there right now and all the suffering that's historically happened. Entirely funded, entirely controlled by Iran. There is no Hezbollah without Iran. There is no Hezbollah without Iran. I mean, there might be a political movement with ideology, but they don't have a bunch of rockets, they don't have a bunch of weapons without Iran. They are a complete, total proxy of Iran. And that's the kind of activity.
It is interesting to know that while the Trump administration is seemingly clear-eyed on the situation vis-a-vis Lebanon, President Donald Trump, nonetheless, after a report by the American news site Axios, had reported that he lashed out at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over Israel's defensive strikes against Hezbollah, has now confirmed in an exclusive Pod Force One interview with the New York Post's Miranda Devin that he was a little bit perturbed by the Israeli leader.
Now, Axios reported that you had a phone call with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, in which you were angry with him. You said, "Are you effing crazy? What are you effing doing? I helped you stay out of jail." Is that true? Did you speak to him in those terms?
I did. I wouldn't say angry. I was a little bit perturbed at his constantly fighting with Lebanon. You know, at some point I said, "Bibi, we got to stop this. We got to stop it." But I have a very good relationship. We've done.
It is important to know that while the announcement by President Trump about a ceasefire in Lebanon, after discussing the matter with both Israel and Hezbollah's representatives, the Iranian proxy had ceasefire against IDF troops and civilian communities along the Israeli border with Lebanon overnight, igniting hope among Israel's northern communities for long-aspired quiet and a sense of security.
We hope that it will be a real ceasefire this time, and not to experience all the sirens and booms and missiles and all of what we had, with interceptions overhead the kids when we take them out of school and all of that, and to really have quiet this time. The children need this routine. The feeling is of insecurity, to be honest, but there's no choice. I need to make a living, and as long as the school is open and the kids are studying, then I hope it will be okay, and there will be no missiles, and there won't be a security, that is, for there to be security.
Regrettably, however, the Iranian terror proxy Hezbollah did not manage to abide by its commitment to ceasefire for long, with rocket alert sirens in northern Israel over incoming projectiles sounding from 11 a.m. this morning, with repeated instances that followed. Meanwhile, it remains to be seen how Israel intends to react, that after Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz argued that the United States had validated Jerusalem's position vis-à-vis Lebanon.
בהמשך לבקשת ארצות הברית, נמנע צה"ל עד אתמול מתקיפות עוצמתיות.
In response to a request by the U.S., the IDF refrained from powerful attacks on Beirut until yesterday, with the exception of targeted eliminations, due to the U.S. negotiations for an agreement with Iran.
מהלך ביחד עם צה"ל.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and I had led a move together with the IDF that aimed to create an equation that articulated that the fate of Dahia and Beirut is the same as the fate of the northern communities in Israel, and if Israeli communities continue to be attacked, we will attack the Shiite Dahia neighborhood in Beirut, which is a Hezbollah stronghold. There will no longer be a state of calm in Beirut, and Israeli communities are attacked. As part of this framework, the Prime Minister and I issued statements that clarified the principle and the condition, and the IDF spokesman also issued an evacuation notice for residents of Dahia in preparation ahead of an attack if the firing on Israeli communities continues. The immediate result was the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of residents from the Dahia neighborhood. 600,000 out of 950,000 as of yesterday evening had evacuated, which created heavy pressure on Hezbollah and the Lebanese government. This principle was also made clear to the American administration even before the move was made, that we will not accept firing on Israeli communities and will act accordingly. And this was also clarified in Prime Minister Netanyahu's conversation with the President of the United States yesterday. The Americans have validated this principle, which is a change from the situation prior, and informed the Lebanese government and all relevant parties about the new equation. If there is no quiet in Israeli communities, there will be no quiet in Beirut.
Meanwhile, during a change of command ceremony in which Major General Roman Goffman assumed the role of Mossad director, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed that Jerusalem will not allow Iran to turn the wheels after sustaining a devastating blow to its capacity to fulfill its aspirations of annihilating the State of Israel.
The Mossad will continue to be at the forefront of our fight against Iranian aggression. Continuing the consistent policy we have been leading for years, we will not allow the Iranian regime to turn the wheel back. We will not allow it to obtain nuclear weapons. We will not allow it to threaten our existence. This regime of terror, which is destined to disappear from the world, and we will help it reach this goal, this regime will not again threaten us with nuclear bombs and thousands of deadly ballistic missiles. This is my directive, and this is your mission. This is your mission, Roman, and that of all the thousands who are here today.
It is important to highlight that Prime Minister Netanyahu's directives to the Mossad come at a time when the Trump administration continues to engage with the Ayatollah regime to, quote, truly test the proposition of how far they're willing to go.
They entered into a ceasefire. They agreed, we agreed to stop. But part of that agreement was that they would reopen the straits. They did not, at which point the president decided, and I think appropriately, we can't have a world in which only Iranian ships get through the straits. And so if they're going to shut down the straits for everybody, we're going to shut down the straits for them. And we have done that through a very effective blockade, and by the way, through the seizure of sanctioned ships in the Indo-Pacific as well. The cost to Iran every single day in lost revenue is in the hundreds of millions of dollars that they are losing in lost revenue that they're not generating as a result of that. Now, we are in talks, and I say talks because talks with Iran are not like talks with Switzerland, okay? They're very different. They require the use of intermediaries, unfortunately. But there is the prospect before us, which could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, that for the first time, certainly in my memory, they have agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear program that just a month ago, just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people. But we'll be able to engage them in a process to truly test the proposition of how far they're willing to go.
While President Trump pushes for a diplomatic resolution to the conflict with Iran, the Ayatollah regime is unceasingly testing the American leader's patience, with U.S. Central Command forced to incapacitate an Iranian oil vessel attempting to breach the American blockade, while the RGC launched dozens of ballistic missiles against U.S. naval assets and bases throughout the Gulf, including specifically the Kingdom of Bahrain and Kuwait. And while CENTCOM announced that all of the incoming projectiles directed at U.S. assets, bases, and service members were successfully intercepted, ballistic missiles struck Kuwait's international airport, killing at least one and wounding 60 others. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News, which is made possible by the generosity of our viewers. Please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan wishing you an Erev Mevorach. God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.